Episode number 872. Ask Ivan about GDP and morning meetings.
You're listening to the official BNI podcast with BNI founder and Chief Visionary Officer, Dr. Ivan Misner. Stay tuned for networking and referral marketing tips from the man who's been called the father of modern networking, along with suggestions and insights into getting the most from your membership in the world's largest networking organization, BNI.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the official BNI podcast. I'm Priscilla Rice, and I'm coming to you from Live Oak Recording Studio in Berkeley, California, and I'm joined on the phone today by the founder and the Chief Visionary Officer of BNI, Dr. Ivan Misner. Hello, Ivan. How are you, and where are you?
Hey, I'm in Austin still, but I'm headed to Santa Barbara next week to work from Santa Barbara and have a little bit of time off. And I just want to let everyone know that Tim Roberts, who I introduced in episode 866, will be my guest co-host. For the first time, I'll have a guest co-host. He'll be running the next two podcasts, and I introduced him as the guest expert or guest co-host in episode 866. So please welcome Tim next week on his first two episodes of the BNI podcast.
Great. I look forward to it.
So today I'm doing an Ask Ivan session. And so I've got two questions. One is about GDP and the other is about morning meetings. In particular, is why are most of our groups, not all, but why are most in the morning? The first is actually was not a question, but it was a statement that was given to me, which I thought was kind of interesting. I received a message from a member regarding episode number 860, which was another Ask the Founder, Ask Ivan, and it had several topics. One of the topics was thank you for closed business, or TYCFB as we call it sometimes. Thank you for closed business. In that podcast, I said that based on the United Nations estimates of GDP, gross domestic product, there were 100 countries in the world with a lower GDP than what BNI generated for its members in thank you for closed business last year.
Mm-hmm.
The member scolded me for comparing GDP to thank you for closed business, telling me that they are not the same. Okay. So from the perspective that one is a nation's gross domestic product and the other is BNI's business generated for members, there's obviously a difference between a country and a company. However, let's look at the definition of GDP, gross domestic product. The link, the definition that I'm about to give is going to be in the transcript. This is the definition. GDP measures the monetary value of final goods and services, that is, those that are bought by the final user, produced in a country in a given period of time, say a quarter or a year. That's a parenthetical comment in the definition. It counts all of the output generated within the borders of a country. That's the definition according to the International Monetary Fund website of what GDP is. Now, let's replace the words GDP in this definition. Let's replace the words GDP and country with the words thank you for closed business and BNI members. If we do that, you get thank you for closed business measures the monetary value of final goods and services, that is, those that are bought by the final user, produced by BNI members in a given period of time, say a quarter or a year. It counts all the output generated within BNI. It's the same thing. Okay, One's a company, one's a country. Mm-hmm. But if you just replace country, if you just replace GDP and country with thank you for closed business and BNI, it's the same thing. word for word, same definition, was simply replacing country information with BNI information. The comparison that I gave between GDP and thank you for closed business holds up as a very reasonable analogy. GDP is the amount of business generated in a country. Thank you for closed business is the amount of business generated in BNI for its members. It's a fair comparison. This member's comment to me is a great example of how people pick apart an example instead of embracing the general concept it represents. Things like this happen in business and in BNI chapters all the time. They are people who look for problems where none really exist. BNI passes millions of referrals a year, and our members generate tens of billions of US dollars worth of business for each other. Embrace that incredible statistic. Celebrate that amazing number. I am humbled by the business that BNI members generate for one another. And I like to explain things like that in a way that gives us all a unique perspective on what an amazing job the members are doing and the impact that the organization is having all around the world in local communities all around the world. Most people don't know this, but when I published my doctoral dissertation at the University of Southern California in 1993, the thesis related to the impact that groups like BNI could have on local communities around the world. Well, after almost 40 years in this organization and over 30 years since I wrote my dissertation, I can categorically state that the impact has met or exceeded my wildest imagination. We are positively impacting local communities all around the world, providing a system, a process, and the training to generate referrals and create, as the IMF says, monetary value for goods and services. We are changing the way the world does business, and we're doing that through our philosophy of giver's gain. I stand by my analogy. I think is outstanding, and stop being so picky. That's my opinion of that. Okay, the second question, and I think we have time for two. The second question is a pretty quick answer. And the second question was from somebody in Arizona. And she asked, why did I start BNI with morning meetings? Now, granted, not all of our chapters meet in the morning. We do have now groups that meet in around lunch or in the afternoon. We have a few, not a lot, that meet in the evening, but the overwhelming majority of chapters still meet in the morning. And she asked the question and she loved the answer. And so I thought I would share it because I talked to her directly. And here's the answer. I started BNI in the morning because most companies, the regular business hours are later. You know, they open after BNI meetings are done. And I started BNI in the morning. And here's the irony. I'm a night owl. At least I used to be a night owl. I did late hours and did not get up early. But I started BNI early in the morning because none of my clients would meet with me at 7 or 7:30 or, early morning meeting. They weren't interested in meeting with me in the early morning. They wanted to meet after business hours started. And so none of my clients would meet at that hour. And so I figured, what the heck? That's a great time to do business. Yeah, okay, I don't like really early mornings, but I'm going to start. And the first chapters started at 7 a.m. And it varies a little bit from country to country because some countries, the normal start time is at 10, not 9. And so chapters do meet at different times in the morning, but the first chapters I started were 7 a.m., which is ironic because I don't like or didn't like early morning meetings. I used to have to set 3 alarm clocks, Priscilla, to get up. Seriously, if I had to get up at 5 so I could leave at 6 to get to a meeting, I would set my alarm next to me twice. And the first time it went off, I shut it off, but I had it set to go a second time. And I'd set it off like an hour in advance to just start waking up. And it would ring a second time, like 15, 20 minutes before I had to get up. And then the third alarm clock I would set in the bathroom. So I'd have to get up and walk to the dressing area in the bathroom to wake up. That's how I hated early mornings. But I knew it was the best time for me to meet, to network, because I wouldn't miss any business. And so that's the reason why the overwhelming majority are in the morning. And so when people say to me, I'm not a morning person, no, don't. Nobody was less of a morning person than me. And the irony is, of course, that once people started asking me to open a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth chapter, I was doing at least 4 morning meetings a week for 15, 20 years.
Mhm.
I would do 3 or 4 a week, and I'd keep waking up going, I hate mornings. Why did I start this in the mornings? But I did it because my clients didn't want to meet in the morning. And that's the reason why most of our chapters are morning meetings. And that's the reason why I started the organization as a morning meeting organization. Those are my 2. Ask the founder. Well, one was give my opinion to the founder, and the other was an ask the founder. Those are my answers. Any thoughts, Priscilla, before we wrap?
I'm in favor of morning meetings. That's what I want to say. And the reason is because if you start, I think, an afternoon meeting, it's really hard to get back to work after that, and not just miss your clients, but actually try to refocus.
It is, and I agree. One of the reasons why we did afternoon, and there's much less of them, is childcare, getting kids to school. That was an issue.
Yeah, right. That's a big issue.
And so that's why we eventually started doing, lunch or afternoon. But there's still a minority of the chapters. What do you think about the GDP thought? Am I off base with comparing GDP to thank you for closed business?
I don't think so. I think you explained it really well.
Yeah, I
And,
think he was just whining.
what
People
was,
complain as though it's an Olympic event sometimes. It's not, I've checked.
yeah, I like that you said, don't be so picky.
Yeah, really. All right, well, that's it. That's all I have for today. And remember, everyone, next week, Tim Roberts is going to do 2 co-host podcasts. Thank you, Priscilla. Back to you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ivan. Well, that's it for this week. This podcast is sponsored by MisnerAudioprograms.com. These audio programs will provide you with the tools and the inspiration to powerfully enhance your BNI experience. So check out the great material that's available to you at MisnerAudioprograms.com, and then use the promo code IVAN50 for 50% off of everything. All of the proceeds go to the BNI Foundation. Thank you so much for listening. This is Priscilla Rice, and we look forward to having you join us again next week for another exciting episode of the official BNI podcast.